All right, it's deja vu. We're back. It's Pocono race number 2. We just got done watching race number 1. So now we'll be breaking down race number 2 for you guys. And we got everyone back together again. It's myself, Kev, Coop, and then Mr. Takedown himself, Rich. Rich took down a tournament in the first Pocono race, so be sure to listen to his advice for this one. But for this race, it's pretty similar. I mean, it's 140 laps compared to 130, so it's only 10 laps more. It doesn't really mean too much, except for there's really not that many Dominator points available, so we really want to focus on place differential again. And if we learned anything from the first race, I think there's it's very interesting with the pit strategy and the cycling that really distributes a lot of these Dominator, a lot of these hog points, where you're going to see a bunch of different guys up front, a lot of different guys earning those fast laps. So it's really hard to rely on just one or two guys to lead a bulk of this race. Because of the invert, there's a lot of really chalky plays. So there's probably going to be a lot of duplicated lines, whereas in the first race, there wasn't as many duplicated lines. I think we're going to see a lot of really high owned guys. But for good reason. I mean, you really just want to look at race 1 and figure out who ran well there, who was running fast laps there, and then basically just plug those guys into your lines. The other thing to keep in mind too is if a driver wrecked out or had issues in the first race, they potentially might be going to a backup car for the second race. So all those guys will have to start from the rear, but most of them are starting from the rear anyways if they wrecked out. And then the only other thing to add there is the guys who aren't going to a backup car know exactly what they need from their cars in order to make them go faster, where these backup cars haven't hit the track yet. So they might be at a little bit of a disadvantage, but most of them start so far back in the pack that they have so much place differential upside anyway. So I don't really think it's going to matter too much. So we'll start with you today, Kev. If you're looking at Kyle Larson down to Kevin Harvick for the expensive range, who are the guys you're targeting?
I mean, I'll just comment on Larson again. It's getting repetitive. He was fast again today. Didn't quite work out for him. Had a little issue there on the last turn of the last lap, but yeah, he was fast. I think he's still in play. They don't like him quite as much because his price went up even more. It was off for a little bit of PD, but I think the guy I like the most tomorrow is going to be Kyle Busch. He led not a bunch, but led some laps earlier today. We kind of liked him in the last video for today's race. I just think he's going to, offer you a lot of PD potential to move up, and I definitely see him contending for this race today. Like I said, we say all the time Kyle Busch is best when he gets practice, and he had 130 laps of practice today. And his car was good to begin with. Make some tweaks to that. I don't see why he shouldn't be a factor tomorrow. And then the other guy likes Denny Hamlin. It's kind of the same deal. We liked him for today's race, and he did pretty damn good. Now he starts 17th, so offers you a lot of PD, make a couple improvements on that car, and tomorrow might be the day we finally see Denny make it to victory lane.
Yeah, I agree. I think I slightly like Hamlin more. Denny runs really well at Pocono. He put in a good race today. He's got, I think, 6 career wins, and I think that's tied for the most with Jeff Gordon. So this is a great track for Denny. He won here in the second race last year, and I think he'll put together a really strong race tomorrow. And as Kev mentioned, Kyle Busch, he's always complaining about his car or whatever he's racing for like the first 2 stages. And then finally, it seems like stage 3, he usually figures it out and finds some speed, but he should come into this race with his car pretty well tuned up and ready to go. So got to like Kyle Busch in this as well. And the other guy I'm going to mention is we have Chase Elliott at low. And part of the reason is he's not expected to go to a backup car, but he did sustain some damage at the very beginning of the race. It didn't seem to affect him for the rest of the race, but he is coming in with a car that in the first race did take a little damage. So it's not the optimal equipment. Although again, today it didn't seem to affect him too much, but if you look down further, Byron and Bowman had excellent races today as well for Team Hendricks, and we'd rather go down there. So just something to think about if you're looking at Chase. We like other plays a little better.
Yeah, and speaking of those guys down here in the 9K range, Coop just mentioned, that we definitely love both Blaney and Byron. They were fast all race. Blaney started, I think, 27th in the race today, ended up with a top 5 finish. He was really fast the entire race. William Byron was up in the top 3 the whole race. He actually passed Larson to the very beginning of the race and was running really fast laps the entire race. So both of those guys are a fair amount of place differential, and I can definitely see them finishing in the top 5 again. The other 2 guys in this range, Joe Logano and Brad Kay, both of them are all right. They offer a little PD, Joe Logano more so than Brad Kay. But I would tend to probably play Blaney or Byron just because we saw how fast those guys were yesterday. Logano was pretty quick early on in the race, but he was running a different strategy than most of the other cars, so it was kind of hard to base his speed and whatnot compared to everybody else just because of the differing strategy.
I like Logano as a GPP play, actually. I don't think he'll see much ownership, and I think he's got a little less upside than some of the other guys below him, but I think he's right there with him, and I don't think he'll see high ownership. So if you're thinking in a GPP mindset, you're thinking there's going to be a lot of chalky lines in these tournaments, I don't mind the pivot on Logano. And Blaney, Byron, and Bowman are 3 of my favorite plays on the slate. I'll throw Bowman in this 9K category too, since he's the highest 8K driver at 8,700. And he had a fantastic race today and won. And Hendricks just really put in a good show again today. All of their drivers, even Chase, who had issues early, came from the back and finished well. But I think Byron and Bowman have a lot of PD upside. They're fast, and I think they can both fight for another top 5. So I like both of them. And again, I put Blaney slightly behind him, but really like this range a lot.
Yeah, the nice thing about this range is, these drivers are pretty cheap, right? Because DraftKings came out with pricing, obviously, before seeing how they ran in the first race. So you can really take advantage of that price discount that you're getting on a lot of these drivers right here. And they were fast in the first race, and they offer place differential now, where some of them offered place differential in the first race where some of them didn't. But the only thing I'll say is, like, everyone's going to be on these guys, right? So like Coop was saying, it might be worth maybe pivoting off one of these guys to get another one of those potentially lower owned drivers who has very similar upside. So Kevin Harvick, for example, I think he potentially might get overlooked a little bit. Is he going to win the race? Probably not, but his car looked decent enough to run, in that top 5, kind of top 8 range. And if, Blaney, Byron, or Bowman have an issue, that could potentially be a good pivot off of you. But with that being said, I still think a bulk of your lines you want to be building around those 3 drivers, kind of in that 8 to 9K range. It's really easy to fit all of them in a line. Another guy too, I think is going to be really chalky, is Matt DiBenedetto. He was running pretty well until he got into some issues. I believe he dragged the fuel can out of the pit box, which kind of put him a couple of laps down, and was never really able to recover from that. So at $8,100 starting 32nd, he should easily be able to move forward and fight for hopefully top 15. I would kind of say is his upside there. But I guess we'll go back to you, Kev. What are your thoughts on maybe either the 9K range or the 8K range there?
Yeah, I think you guys did a pretty good job at hitting on everyone. Kind of some obvious plays in this range, but someone I'll touch on that kind of just goes to that contrarian would be Kirk Bush. He was running pretty good all day, led some laps, exciting for a little while there. Looked like he might be able to pull off a win, a little hopeful, but obviously that didn't happen. But I think he'd be a good kind of pivot play. Just someone that's solid, going to offer you a little PD, should probably be able to get a top 10 again tomorrow, and just be a little bit different than everyone else, because I know we said it a little bit, but a lot of the plays are pretty obvious. So if you want to have a chance at actually winning money tomorrow, not splitting $10 with 100 people, you're going to have to go differ somewhere. I think Kirk Busch should be a viable option, and this range is going to probably be way underlooked compared to the guys around him. But if we move down into the 7K range, I really like Chastain. really the last like handful of races, he's just been racing lights out. I mean, he's can't really ask for much more out of him. He's starting 33rd, so offers you a bunch of PD there, and with all these other guys around him that are going to be probably a little bit chalkier, he might be a way that you can still get all that PD and avoid some of the ownership. That being said, he does start 33rd, and he's cheap, so probably will come in with some ownership, but I'd have to imagine it's going to be less than Matty D, Bowman, Byron.
Yeah, and Chastain, after he got the previous race, he got second, and they were interviewing him after the race, and he said, early on in the season, I was really not in my element yet. He was still getting used to racing in the Cup Series, racing with those cars, and he said, he admitted that he was just getting into too many drivers and making too many mistakes, and it was nice to hear him say that I'm getting better and I'm really settling in now, and I think that the results have shown that. And he's been putting together a couple really nice races. And I think tomorrow he'll be excited to get back at it and hopefully finish the race. He was unfortunate and wasn't able to do so today, but I'm hoping tomorrow he can put together a really nice race and maybe fight for a top 10.
Yeah, I think you guys pretty much nailed this range. I will touch on Chase Briscoe, though. Starting 24th, we thought he was going to do a lot better in the first race, and none of the Stewart Haas cars really did, which has kind of been the same thing for them every single time we're in the 550 package. But starting 24th, he does offer, a few spots of place differential. I can definitely see him getting into the top 20. We just have him at low interest because the other guys around there we like a little bit more. But if I drop on down here into the 6K range, Cole Custer is going to be super chalk this week, starting dead last. Everybody saw Brad K try to drop below and got into the back of him and ended up putting him into the wall and ending his day early. So he offers all the place differential. I mean, I don't really see a way that he doesn't get up into the top 25 by the end of this race. And then Austin Dillon starting 21st. If you watch the video for the race today, Andrew mentioned Austin Dillon has generally been like a solid GPP play because he's starting inside the top 15, the top 12 most races, and nobody tends to play him. Well, now we're getting him starting 21st at $6,600. I think at this price he offers a ton of upside, and I feel like he's going to be under-owned because of all the other better place differential guys in this range.
Yeah, I think he's a pretty interesting pivot play off of Cole Custer. I mean, everyone's going to be on Custer, and it kind of have to make the argument whether that was, Keselowski's fault or Custer's fault, with who kind of caused that wreck. Like they both just misread the situation and it ended his day. But at $6,800 starting dead last, he's probably going to be the highest owned driver on the slate. He literally can't lose you any points, just like a Quinn Huff, basically, who actually worked out pretty well for the first race. But Cole Custer is going to be, Cole Custer will be pretty high owned, but for good reason. It's almost kind of like a free square plugging in. But like Rich was saying, because we know he's going to be so high owned, like if you are taking some GPPs and you are trying to, advance your line ahead of a ton of other chalky lines, I think throwing Austin Dillon in there as a pivot play is a good option. And then looking at the punt plays, again, same kind of issue happened for Newman. He spun out and rear-ended the wall, basically ending his day. He only finished one spot ahead of Cole Custer there. So he, again, is going to be super chalky, starting 37th. He can't really lose you any points. But the same argument could be made of, okay, if everyone's going to be playing Newman, which we would, but if you wanted to be a little bit different, I don't mind playing Corey LaJoie. I don't think he really has the same amount of upside as Ryan Newman, but he doesn't really have that much more downside starting 36th. And then I still think Eric Jones is still interesting. I think his finishing potential is probably higher than Newman's and LaJoie's. Newman just didn't even seem like he was running that well until he was able to kind of get some track position. But no matter what you do, this second race, I think, is going to be really chalky. So you got to basically draw your line in the sand of what chalky plays am I going to pivot away from? And it could easily just be as simple as just one pivot play. And that would be enough to differentiate yourself enough to potentially advance yourself above all those other chalky lines that are out there.
Yeah, I think Newman will probably be the highest owned driver on the slate. $5,500 Ryan Newman starting 32nd or 37th. I'm sorry. It's really, really good value. So I think he'll be the highest owned driver on the slate. I think Custer will be high owned too. And Andrew, you touched on this, but I think Austin Dillon has better finishing potential than Custer. And Custer seems to just have issue after issue at these races. So if Custer has an issue, he's super chalky. He doesn't have a great race. And Austin Dillon cleans it up a little bit and puts together a better race tomorrow. I think that it's an excellent pivot. And I also feel the same way about LaJoie and Jones, because I think Ryan Newman will be the highest owned driver. So if you are really avoiding the chalk, those are definitely the pivots we like. But with that being said, there's a reason Ryan Newman's going to be the highest owned driver, and it's because he's likely going to be he should easily be in the top 25 by the end of the race. And that's a lot of place differential that he's given you. So those are where I'm at with some of the lower price drivers.
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys pretty much nailed everything here. I personally like Corey LaJoie and Eric Jones the best. I think that you're just going to avoid a little bit of the chalk going with them. But yeah, other than that, I don't really have anything to add here other than Huff went back to Huff this race and it worked out for us. But it's probably no go tomorrow, just starting up too high. Pretty much gets rid of all of his upside.
Yeah, I think for value this week, I have no problems playing both Custer and Ryan Newman in the same line. But in GPPs, I would recommend against that just because that's going to be the most common pairing of value plays. So in GPPs, I would maybe play one of those guys and then maybe fade Cole Custer and play Austin Dillon, or play Cole Custer and then fade Ryan Newman and play Eric Jones. That way you're still eating some of the chalk in one of the areas, but you're playing a GPP plays or other value play.
Yeah, that's great advice. So that's going to do it for the Pocono race weekend. It was pretty eventful with 4 DFS slates to break down. And don't forget, we still have the Xfinity video tomorrow before this Cup race. And our Xfinity video is up right now. We still have the spreadsheets, which you guys can pull up yourselves. They're over on Twitter at FastCarsFM. And then again, as always, any questions you have, shoot them over to us over there or drop them down in the comments below. And then just thank you. I mean, we've been growing a lot ever since we started at the beginning of the year, even getting mentions from some other NASCAR DFS channels that are out there through, Brandon Cruz or Nate Lane, for example. So they have some great channels as well. And, it's just fun to see that everyone's kind of coming together and making money at the same time. So if you're new here, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button to it. It definitely means a lot to us, and we will see you guys next weekend.